There was an important proceeding today that you may not have heard about, and I want to get into it, but here is why we're getting into it. The January 6th attack and the failed coup that Trump led has actually, after some delay, led to many types of accountability. There are militia members doing long prison terms. There is something that's never happened in history before, which is the Justice Department prosecuting its own former overseer, the former president, with Jack Smith having that DOJ trial ready to go. It is just currently on appeal in the Supreme Court, and we'll cover that for you when it happens. But today marked something else, another kind of accountability that I'm going to tell you matters, that is important. A Trump ally who did more inside our DOJ with your tax dollars paying his salary than anyone else in the DOJ to try to steal the election today had to go under oath in proceedings that matter a lot to a lawyer. And you may say, okay, Ari, but I want to see him in prison or this or that, but this matters. We're talking about a major fall for someone who at one point was vying to become the acting attorney general. It's the man you see on your screen. He was then trying to be the top lawyer in government. You may recall the descent began when federal agents who once reported to someone like Clark showed up here at his door and brought him out, basically in his PJs, as they searched his home. Some of this accountability takes time. That was back in 2022, and some of these cases continue. But today he was under oath and on the run in a different way. Rather than trying to basically answer for what he did, he was under oath in an effort to take away his law license, to disbar him. And that's a big deal, even if other things, as I mentioned, will take longer. This is coming sooner. And he didn't use this proceeding to share any facts that might put him in a good light. He bounced between various claimed legal privileges to argue he couldn't answer the big questions.
That, Mr. Fox, I will invoke the fifth as to. I will invoke executive privilege, law enforcement privilege, deliberative process privilege, and attorney-client privilege on the Fifth Amendment, executive privilege, law enforcement privilege, deliberative process privilege, attorney-client privilege, executive privilege, and the other three. And I'm taking the fifth. I'm not going over the same one. You know the litany of the four. I would respond to that by invoking the same grouping of privileges. With all due respect, the Fifth Amendment at this time, the executive privilege, law enforcement privilege, deliberative process privilege, and the attorney-client privilege.
It went on and on like that. You can see the procedure, the Zoom type setup of the different camera angles we have. I'm not going to show you much more of it, and I want to be clear. Under our system, when a lawyer is in this position and may have criminal liability and other concerns and has government experience, they are allowed to claim those privileges. So he can do that. But he's in the hot seat as officials do decide in that proceeding that you see right there whether they ultimately will disbar Jeffrey Clark. One ethics lawyer has recounted how Clark was helping to attempt the coup and spread around lies and try to basically hijack and kneecap the DOJ in order to steal an election. The D.C. Bar investigators rested their case after 2 days, and apart from answering questions, Clark's side is presenting their defense. Now, another lawyer who's operating on the outside, John Eastman, also could be disbarred in his state where he practices, California. He also faces a potential RICO trial in Georgia. And like Clark, Eastman, as you can see, we put both videos together, also faced a federal search. Both these videos on your screen are part of the process of accountability. And again, for those in a rush, it takes time. You have to go do the search diligently. You have to go over the evidence. You have to afford people their time and rights. But this same D.C. Ethics Board is also evaluating Giuliani for disbarment. New York suspended his law license already. Now, the acting attorney general during this big period in January, Jeffrey Rosen, famously told Congress during the investigation that the plan Clark was cooking up was extreme and that had Trump stuck to it, it would have led to a Nixonian Saturday night massacre, a wave of resignations heading into January 6th.
If Mr. Clark and his approach, which was not based on the facts as we knew them, was to be pursued, then there would be resignations at the Justice Department of all the senior leaders and maybe others as well.
So what Congress heard then, the disciplinary hearing has now heard, and America's heard this. And again, this might look a little dry or in the weeds. It matters so much Because as I've mentioned before, these types of efforts, stealing an election, lying to multiple states, ceding the ground to try to normalize this, and coups, these are always team efforts. There is no solo coup. This is not tennis. You do need some muscle. And in government, you need some of the type of lawyers who will go farther than what they're supposed to or allowed to do and risk their whole careers, if not their liberty. Now, I can't tell you whether Mr. Clark should be convicted of a crime, but I can tell you that when lawyers who spend money going to law school and then build a whole career on being lawyers, and if they go into government and want to come back out and continue to be lawyers, when they look at something like this, well, it's going to make some of the ones who might have gone along before think twice. Not out of some patriotism, I wish more were motivated by that, but out of sheer self-preservation. And there are things that a would-be authoritarian, like Donald Trump wanted to be in 2021, there are things they can ask for that aren't technically crimes. Indeed, the government has extra powers. You can do things in government that you couldn't do as a private lawyer. But you're going to think, even if it's not technically a crime, about this type of accountability and disbarment. Investigators also called the Trump White House attorney, Pat Philbin, as a witness. I want to mention this. This is the interesting part because we're now hearing from him for the first time there after speaking out publicly about how this all went down.
What was your reaction to what Mr. Clark told you on this phone call?
Well, I thought on that phone call that some of these ideas were not plausible. The idea apparently was that, smart thermostats that were connected to the internet somehow were part of the mechanism for tapping into the voting machines to control things.
And there we are. Smart people, they have education and degrees, talking about smart thermostats to make outrageously dumb claims. And the point is, they weren't just dumb. They were smart enough to know they were lies. And at a certain point, it goes beyond what you're allowed to claim and argue and into the type of thing that, again, I'm making a key distinction here. Even if it's not technically a crime you'd go to prison for, it might be so far outside the bounds of your legal obligations, because lawyers and doctors and others can't just do anything. They have some rules, and you might break them so flagrantly that you don't get to even be a lawyer anymore.
It was one of the most dramatic moments came when there were these conversations in the White House with Jeffrey Clark pushing this illegal fraudulent scheme to have the Justice Department say that there was fraud so that states could basically throw out the electors. And at one point, Philbin or another lawyer said, well, there'll be riots. And he said, Jeffrey Clark, well, that's why we have the Insurrection Act.
If it makes you feel any better, I have already put 𝐓𝐑𝐔 on alert. He's ready to go if it comes to that. General, I can assure you.
Hey, General, let me into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Wheelie.
So, come on, what is it now, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the double. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And, oh yeah. I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so damn weird going on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion.
Security, please bring up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐌𝐏, sir.
Right, 𝐓𝐑𝐔𝐌𝐏.
She's right in front.
We're facing a heavy, sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark craft.
General, need to immediately evacuate. Hold on. National security advisory. Stay down. Check it out. The mission is outrageous. The amateurs on a suicide mission.
So I had to hack my way onto this frequency.